Hey there, and welcome to your deep dive. We're going deep into belief today.
Belief.
Yeah, like why people believe weird things, you know.
Oh, right, right.
But more importantly, how we can become better thinkers just by understanding the patterns in belief.
I like that.
So we've got all this really cool stuff from Michael Shermer.
Oh, yeah, I love his work.
He's an author, but also a skeptic.
Right.
And we're going to be focusing a lot on his book, Why People Believe Weird Things.
Catchy title.
I know, right? But so you're probably familiar with basic logical fallacies, right?
Sure.
But today we're going way deeper, into the psychology of why they work, why they're so persuasive.
The how and why of bad arguments, I'm in.
So mental self-defense,
They're against bad ideas.
Exactly, like dodging those punches of misinformation.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. So one of the things that Shermer's really good at is, well, he doesn't point fingers.
Not about shaming people for what they believe.
Right. It's more about sharpening our own WN thinking.
Becoming better critical thinkers.
Yeah. So let's jump right into some of these fallacies.
Okay, sounds good.
First up, the either-or fallacy.
A classic.
It is. And it's so sneaky because it makes you think there are only two choices, right?
When there might be tons.
Tons.
Yeah.
But you get tricked into thinking it's just A or B.
Like, do you want to go to the beach or the mountains?
Yeah. What about staying home or going to a concert?
Exactly.
It's like saying you can only have chocolate or vanilla ice cream.
But there's cookie dough and strawberry
Okay.
and mint chip.
So many flavors.
So many choices.
So have you ever, noticed yourself doing this, the either or?
Oh, all the time.
Me too.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was trying to decide what to watch with my friends.
Oh, yeah.
And someone was like, well, it's either this action movie or this, rom-com.
In between.
No, but there are documentaries and thrillers and foreign films.
Endless possibilities.
And it's like they were trying to box me in.
Force a choice. It's like a debate tactic almost.
It totally is.
Or to manipulate you into buying something.
Okay, so next up, circular reasoning. This one is extra sneaky.
Way.
It sounds super logical,
Oh, I see.
but it's not.
Give me an example.
It's like saying, this ancient text is true because a divine being wrote it.
Okay.
But then how do we know a divine being wrote it?
Because the text says so.
Exactly. See? Circular.
Hey, yeah. Proving something by assuming it's already true.
And you see it everywhere, not just in religion.
Oh, for sure. Like in science sometimes. You have to be super careful.
Oh, interesting. Give me an example from your field.
Well, in physics, you might hear someone say, gravity exists because things fall to the earth.
Okay, yeah.
But then they say, things fall to the earth because of gravity.
Oh, right. It's just going around in a
A
circle.
tautology.
So it's like that old joke, why the chicken crossed the road.
To get to the other side.
Exactly. It's not really an answer, just restating the question.
But sometimes it's not that obvious.
True, true. Okay, let's move on to the slippery slope.
Ooh, I've fallen for this one.
Oh, me too. This one plays on our fears.
Fear of the unknown.
Kind of. It takes something plausible,
Okay.
and then boom, jumps to this extreme outcome.
Give me an example.
It's you beat that cookie.
Oh, no, not the cookie.
You'll want another one.
Uh-huh.
Then you'll eat the whole bag.
And then I'll gain 10 pounds.
And then you'll end up living in sweatpants forever.
A slippery slope to sweatpants land.
It is. But is it always a fallacy, though?
That's a good question.
What if we ignore these little acts of dishonesty?
Could that create a bigger culture of corruption?
Yeah. So maybe it's not always a fallacy?
Maybe it's more like a matter of degrees.
Right. Sometimes small actions have consequences.
Like ripple effect.
But it's a fallacy when the connection is weak.
Between the action and the outcome.
Yes. It's got to be based on evidence, not just speculation.
Okay, I see.
Speaking of falling for these tricks, why do we do it?
Yeah, is there something wrong with our brains?
Not really.
Yeah.
Our brains are actually wired to be efficient.
Efficient.
Yeah. They want things to be certain and simple.
Makes sense.
So we take these mental shortcuts.
I see.
Your brain is constantly bombarded with information.
Overload.
Totally. So it has to make fast decisions, and those decisions aren't always super accurate.
It's going for speed over accuracy.
Sometimes, yeah. It's using these mental rules of thumb.
Instead of deep thinking.
Exactly.
But it's not about being stupid.
No. It's about knowing how our brains work.
So we can outsmart our own brains, in a way.
I like that. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Shermer talks about the The Plan problem.
Plum problem.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, so it's basically that the more you K and OBO, the harder it is to change your mind.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Like, imagine you've built this giant tower of knowledge, right?
Brick by brick.
Exactly. Are you going to tear it all down just because one new brick doesn't quite fit?
Not without a good reason.
Right. But that also means you might miss out on a better tower, right?
One that's even stronger.
Think about those groundbreaking scientific theories.
Oh, like continental drift?
Yes. Or evolution. They totally challenged the knowledge towers of their time.
People weren't ready to accept them.
It took a long time. And it wasn't because scientists were stubborn, right?
It's hard to overturn beliefs.
Even with evidence.
Even with solid proof.
So think about a time when you really struggled to change your mind. What made it so difficult?
It's like you're attached to that old way of thinking.
Exactly. And we've all been there. It's human.
It is,
Yeah.
but recognizing it is important.
So we can be more open to new information.
To change your mind.
Right. Now, I want to shift gears a bit. Schirmer has this quote he highlights from Baruch Spinoza.
I love Spinoza.
The quote is, not to ridicule, not to bewail, not to scorn, but to understand human actions. And I think that's a great mission statement for us for this deep dive.
We're not judging.
No, we're exploring.
How and why of belief.
Yes. And speaking of exploring, let's talk about statistics.
Oh boy.
Because statistics can be so misleading.
Right, definitely.
It's like that saying, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Uh-huh.
And Schumer tells this great story about an ESP experiment at the Edgar Cayce Center.
Oh, tell me about this.
So picture this, right? Edgar Cayce Center, famous for psychic readings.
Okay.
They're doing this ESP experiment with cards. And Shermer, the skeptic, he's participating.
No way. He's trying to use ESP.
He even tries to receive the message.
Wow, what happened?
Well, some people scored above average, like way above.
Suggesting psychic powers.
Yeah. And the instructor, they're super excited.
But Shermer, he's a skeptic, right? I bet he wasn't convinced.
Oh, definitely not. He noticed something about the scores.
Oh, what was that?
Well, some were really low,
Okay.
some really high, and most were like clustered around the average.
That sounds kind of familiar.
It's the bell curve.
You know. Oh, right. The normal distribution.
Yeah, which is exactly what you'd expect if it was just random chance.
So those high ESP scores,
Not psychic powers, just outliers.
just like random chance.
Exactly. Shermer points out that if you have enough people,
Someone's bound to get a high score.
just by luck,
Makes sense.
it's like flipping a coin, right? Flip it enough times,
You'll get a streak of heads.
even though it's still 50-50.
Doesn't mean you suddenly have superpowers.
Nope.
So those ESP results,
Statistically meaningless.
it's a good reminder that sometimes we see patterns where there are none.
Oh, totally. I remember this one time I won like 5 scratch-off lottery tickets in a row.
Wow, feeling lucky.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was on a roll.
Did you win big?
Yeah. It was probably just random chance. Should have quit while I was ahead.
Hindsight is 20/20. But it's like you said, we tend to see patterns.
Especially when we want to see them.
Exactly. Like when we're emotionally invested. So having some statistical awareness can help.
Help us see through the illusion.
Yeah, like the next time you see some headline, like study shows people who eat broccoli live longer or something.
Right.
Remember to think critically.
Don't just accept it at face value.
Look for the full context and the role of chance, and all that.
Okay, so moving on. This is a topic I always find really interesting. Altered states of consciousness.
Altered states.
Yeah. Like, is it real or is it all in our heads?
The big question.
Shermer even, debates other skeptics about this.
Interesting. What do they disagree on?
Well, it's about how you define altered state.
I see.
Shermer says there's a difference between quantitative and qualitative changes.
Quantitative and qualitative. Can you explain that?
Okay, so think of it like this. A quantitative change is like adjusting the volume on your radio.
Okay, I'm following.
Same music, just louder or softer.
Right.
But a qualitative change is like switching from rock music to classical music.
Yeah. A totally different experience.
Exactly.
So is he saying that most altered states are just quantitative?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Our brains are doing the same things, but at a different level.
I see.
He uses sleep as an example.
Oh, that's interesting.
When we sleep, our brains are still active. We dream,
Right.
but the overall activity is dialed down.
Like turning down the volume.
Exactly.
But what about really intense experiences?
Like near-death experience.
Yeah. Those feel different, right?
They do, and Shermer acknowledges that, like how powerful they are.
Because they can make people believe in an afterlife, or
Yeah, like something beyond the physical world,
people describe leaving their bodies or seeing a light.
or seeing deceased loved ones.
Right. All these really profound things.
It's mysterious. I get why people would interpret those experiences as, like, evidence for something more.
I can see that, but does Shermer agree?
Well, he encourages us to consider other explanations before jumping to, like, supernatural conclusions.
Okay, what kind of explanation?
He points out that similar experiences can be triggered by certain drugs.
Drugs.
Yeah, or lack of oxygen to the brain,
Interesting.
or even just extreme stress.
So our brains under duress could be creating these sensations.
It's like when you're super tired. You start seeing things, right? Hearing voices.
Your brain's misinterpreting information.
Exactly. And Shermer has this crazy story about being abducted by aliens.
Wait, what? He was abducted.
Not really. He was doing this ultra-marathon cycling race,
Okay.
and he was sleep-deprived. And his support crew, with their motorhome, it all morphed into this alien encounter in his mind.
Wow, that's wild. It shows how easily our brains can be tricked.
Right. Especially when we're tired, stressed.
It makes you wonder, what else are our brains capable of?
I know.
So Shermer doesn't totally rule out something beyond the material world,
No.
but he's saying, think critically.
Consider the more likely explanations.
Before jumping to supernatural conclusions,
Like Occam's razor. Right.
the simplest explanation is usually the best.
So is it more likely that someone had a hallucination from stress?
Or that they were really abducted.
Right.
You gotta weigh the evidence. Choose the explanation that makes the most sense.
So speaking of aliens and extraordinary claims,
You gotta talk about Roswell, right?
Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
Shermer goes deep into that whole alien autopsy footage.
Oh, yeah, the grainy film.
That's the one. And guess what? It was totally debunked.
Really? I remember that causing quite a stir.
It did. But there are all these inconsistencies, like suspicious details.
What kind of details?
Well, the film quality was bad.
Okay.
And the alien bodies look like props, like really fake.
That's kind of suspicious.
And the whole thing just didn't match up with eyewitness accounts.
So it was probably a hoax?
Yeah. If aliens really crashed in Roswell,
You'd think there'd be better proof.
right, more convincing evidence.
But people still believe it.
They do. Even without solid evidence.
The power of belief is strong.
It is. We tend to cling to what we already believe.
Even when there's evidence to the contrary.
It's like that saying, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest.
We choose what to believe.
And that's often amplified by what Shermer calls the feedback loop.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, think of it like a game of telephone.
And the message gets distorted.
Exactly. A rumor or misinterpretation gets repeated, amplified,
Within a community of believers.
and it reinforces those beliefs.
It's like an echo chamber.
Exactly. You only hear what confirms your beliefs.
And anything that challenges them is ignored.
Shermer compares this to, like, historical witch hunts.
The Salem witch trials.
Yeah, the satanic panic of the 80s,
Right.
all fueled by this feedback loop.
Shared beliefs, escalating anxieties.
That's like a collective hallucination
a shared delusion.
with real-world consequences.
Like with the witch trials and the satanic panic.
People's lives were ruined
It's a reminder to be careful.
about misinformation.
And social pressure.
We have to be aware of our tendency to seek out confirmation
And to challenge our own beliefs.
with evidence and different perspectives.
Exactly.
You know what this reminds me of? The phantom gasser of Mattoon.
The what?
The phantom gasser. Back in 1944, in Mattoon, Illinois,
Okay.
there were all these reports of this mysterious attacker.
Attacker.
Yeah, like a gasser,
Yeah.
spraying people with anesthetics.
Sounds scary.
It was. It caused mass panic.
But did they ever catch the gasser?
Nope. No culprit was ever found.
What do you think happened?
I think it was a mass delusion. Like fear and suggestion created this phantom.
Starting with real events, maybe?
Or perceived threats
And then amplified through rumors.
and media coverage.
Creating a cycle of fear.
Exactly. People started interpreting everything as an attack.
Every strange smell, every noise.
And even without the internet, that feedback loop kicked in.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Makes you wonder what those folks in Mattoon would be like on Twitter.
Spreading the panic even faster.
It shows this human tendency to interpret things through a cultural lens.
We see it everywhere.
With the phantom gasser, with alien abductions.
Even with recovered memories.
Yeah, and that's a topic that needs extra care.
Because we're dealing with trauma.
and memory.
It's a tough one, right? Recovered memories.
It is. It's like you have people suddenly remembering these traumatic things.
That's in from childhood.
Yeah, like abuse. But then the question is, are the memories real?
Or were they, like, influenced somehow?
Exactly.
And it's a complex issue. There's no easy answer.
Right.
Shermer's point is we shouldn't just dismiss all recovered memories.
Because trauma are real.
And it can affect how our brains store memories.
But then, on the other hand,
We have to be aware of false memories.
yeah, especially those recovered through, like, certain therapies.
You're talking about hypnosis.
Yeah, hypnosis.
Yeah.
Or, like, guided imagery
Where the therapist might unintentionally lead the patient.
to create memories.
That never actually happened.
And that's a big deal.
Huge consequences, especially if it leads to, like, accusations.
Legal accusations.
Right. We have to be cautious.
Look for other evidence
Yeah.
before jumping to conclusions.
Exactly. It's not about saying someone's lying.
No, of course not.
It's about being critical.
Looking for the truth.
Shermer says to rely on evidence-based approaches.
So, like, corroborating the memories.
With other sources.
And considering other explanations, too.
Right. Because sometimes our memories aren't perfect.
They can be messed with.
By suggestion, by imagination.
Even our own, like, desires and fears.
Our minds are powerful. And they can deceive us.
Even when we think we're being rational.
It happens to the best of us. Speaking of rationality.
Oh, you're going to Ayn Rand.
Yeah, I think her philosophy of objectivism is really interesting in this context.
Okay, how so?
Because it shows how even a philosophy based on reason and logic...
Could go off the rails.
In a way, yeah.
I mean, objectivism itself isn't weird, right?
Not inherently, no. It's about reason, individualism.
People being responsible for themselves.
Right, achieving things on their own merit.
Which, I get the appeal of that.
Okay, too, that sense of control over your own destiny.
Not relying on handouts.
But then, how did it become this, like, cult thing?
That's what I don't get.
Well, Shermer suggests it's about what happens when a set of principles...
Become rigid.
Exactly, like when Ayn Rand and her followers started dictating the correct interpretation.
So it's not individual thought anymore.
It's conformity to a specific worldview.
Which is kind of ironic.
Totally. A philosophy about reason becomes, like, anti-reason.
Because you can't disagree.
Right. It highlights how even rational belief systems can create dogma.
When they value strict adherence over, like, open-mindedness.
That's the danger zone. It's like having a map, but being told you can only follow one specific road.
Even if it leads you to the wrong place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The point is, no belief system is exempt from critical thinking.
We should always question even our own deeply held beliefs.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Logical fallacies, alien autopsies.
Recovered memories, Ayn Rand.
It's been a wild ride through the world of belief.
It has. And hopefully you're feeling a little more equipped to think critically.
To, like, evaluate the information you encounter.
And to understand why people believe the things they do.
Even the weird stuff.
Even the weird stuff.
It's not about becoming cynical.
No, it's about being informed.
Making smarter choices.
Navigating the world with a curious and discerning mind.
So, keep asking questions.
Challenge those assumptions.
Seek out different perspectives.
It's how we learn and grow.
And avoid falling for those weird beliefs.
That Shermer so brilliantly exposes.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep those skeptical minds engaged, and we'll catch you on the next one.